Welcome back. All right, so it's the last day of August, and I figured I wanted to do something a little different today. So the channel's been voting on where everybody's going to finish, and tomorrow I finish the season previews, but I thought now might be a good time to take a look at the standings as predicted by the viewers, by those who were voting, and compare it to last year's standings. I've got last year's standings open on my phone, and we'll discuss this. Now, this, of course, I just recently picked this up, so I thought, yeah, I'll use this in a video. Stanley Cup puck down here, nice touch. But this is a good spot for all the standings, of course. There's 32 spaces here, so Pacific Division, Central Division, Metro Division, or no, Atlantic Division, and then the Metro Division is how I'm going to rank this. I'm not worried about the playoff picture of things. We will be talking about my Stanley Cup prediction. And of course, whoever I predict is going to win the Stanley Cup doesn't. But yeah, so we'll go through and we'll discuss. I wanted to do a video, though, talking about the standings. And this is where recency bias absolutely is a thing. So we'll start with the Pacific Division. And eighth place, according to the vote, is San Jose. Not entirely a surprise there. So this is the first time I've used these, so we'll see how well they fit. Some of these are going to be a tight fit. All right, San Jose's eighth place. I don't really have any argument with that. I will agree, San Jose very likely to be at the bottom of the standings in the Pacific Division, but they should get somewhat better. Seventh place according to the vote, and just barely. Just barely seventh place. The Seattle Kraken. Place Seattle right there. So Seattle just above the San Jose Sharks. I don't know if we're underrating San Jose or not. Or Seattle or not. Maybe. The thing with Seattle is they didn't stay in the hunt for the playoffs late in the season. And I don't know that they're going to be a better team this year or not. There's been some changes, of course. There's change behind the bench and whatnot. But I don't know that there's been enough change to see them as a playoff team. Sixth, this is where I'm thinking, this is that recency bias. The Anaheim Ducks, barely, as I said, end up sixth. Now, looking at last year's standings, so far it's exactly the same. Yep. Anaheim finished ahead of Seattle by 4 points. Seattle was clear of San Jose by 24 points. So that's why I'm saying, yes, San Jose in last spot, probably accurate. But this is where people will vote, and last season's in our brain. Anaheim's the team to watch in the West, I think. I think Anaheim's going to make fools out of a lot of people. Number 5, and dropping from last year's standings, Calgary. So, the vote expects Calgary to be 5th. What's interesting is, I feel like Calgary's expectations are higher going into this season than going into last season, but it does feel kind of odd to have Calgary 5th. Now, there's the possibility Rasmus Anderson gets moved before the season starts. They're probably going to look for futures, draft picks, young players back. But that would just open up an opportunity for Parekh. So I don't know that necessarily makes things worse for Calgary. I don't know. This one, it feels like could come back and bite as well. Number 4, I'm used to doing this as a power rankings, right? So 4th place, Vancouver by the vote. I will agree. I know there's people who are going to look at this and say, well, people are probably overrating Vancouver. I could see Vancouver being as high as 4th. I could see Vancouver being as low as 6th. I could see Anaheim and Calgary finishing ahead of Vancouver. That I could absolutely see happening. So last season, Calgary was 4th in the division. Vancouver was 5th. There was 6 points between the two teams. The vote saying Vancouver should reclaim their spot in 4th. And then we get into the other question. Will there be 5 and 3 when it comes to the playoffs? I think the vote would be yes. But we'll move on. We'll go to 3rd place. And dropping from 2nd place in the standings, according to the vote, the LA Kings. So this is kind of a nightmare scenario for the LA Kings. Because 2nd place, according to the vote, is the Edmonton Oilers. And that would lead us to Edmonton and LA in the first round again. I would rather not see them play each other in the first round this year. To be completely honest, I'm kind of over it. I don't see that as being a benefit to anybody really. Like I don't think the NHL wants to see them against each other again. but it could happen because the question becomes, all right, so let's just say that you're saying while you're watching this, I don't think that, and of course that makes Vegas number one, right? So we'll talk about the Pacific here. So if you are of the mind that Edmonton could knock out Vegas from that first spot and end up first themselves, there are definitely some voters that I would say would probably agree with you. The difference in terms of the points between the Vegas vote and the Edmonton vote, not that much. So people don't seem to see there being that much of a difference. But yeah, Vegas LA would be fun in the first round. That could lead to a potential Edmonton Vancouver if Vancouver could end up in a wild card spot, right? So is that how the Pacific Division's going to go down? We'll find out. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do timestamps because I know people are going to want timestamps for this because it's going to go on for a while apparently. I yap. So 8th place in the Central will not surprise people. Chicago easily got 8th place. And then the question becomes, so will Chicago be the worst in the West or San Jose? And I could see an argument for either team being correct. Both teams are going through the rebuild. They're both trying to build themselves up. It really depends on how much faith you put into the players that San Jose has brought in versus the players that Chicago's got there. And how much do you think that young blue line for Chicago is going to hold up? How well do you think that's going to go? 7th place in the division. So that's not a change, and neither's this. 7th place is Nashville, according to the vote. And I get why. I get why they'd be ahead of Chicago, and I get why they wouldn't be ahead of anybody else. There is the chance that we are underestimating the Nashville Predators going into this coming season. There's also a chance that even if they're being underestimated and they play better than expected, they're still not a playoff team. 6th place, and this one I think is tricky, and this shows the depth of the Central Division. Utah. Now, I don't have a mammoth in like a tiny puck. I just got these. So I don't have a Utah mammoth tiny puck. I will make sure that when in Glasgow has one that I'll pick one up. But it still says Utah Hockey Club, but at any rate, Utah places 6th according to the vote. I will go ahead and say I think they're going to be higher than that. I think Utah could end up in a playoff spot. But at the expense of whom? Now, Utah was 6th in the division this past season. So this is recency bias. This is what that looks like. 5th place in the division. Same team that was 5th place in the division this past season, St. Louis. So I've seen Blues fans saying that they're being underestimated. Yep, probably. I would agree with that. I think St. Louis at this point in time probably doesn't get as much attention because of just how many really good teams there are in the Central. But Jim Montgomery has a way of getting more wins out of a team than other coaches would. So we'll see how all that turns out. But yeah, St. Louis probably being a little bit underestimated. The tricky part is 4th place, Minnesota. Minnesota was 4th place this past season. The funny thing is, the difference between 4th place Minnesota and 5th place St. Louis this past season, 1 point. Just one. So I do think that there may be a little bit of overestimating going on with Minnesota, maybe just a little bit, because I do think St. Louis should be better. And so then the question becomes, so we've got 4 teams here in the Pacific, right? But of course, 2 wild cards from the Central could get in. Will St. Louis have more points than Vancouver? My guess is that they will. So if I had to hazard a guess here, I would say that we will see 5 teams in the Central make it and 3 in the Pacific. I'd be kind of surprised if we don't. I'd be happily surprised if Vancouver got in, or Anaheim, or even Calgary, to be honest, or sure, Seattle. And if it's San Jose, well, the pigs are flying if San Jose gets in the playoffs this year. But it would be nice to see an even 4-4. I think the Central's stronger, as evidenced by the Jets being voted to drop to 3rd in the division, and I will agree with that a little bit too. I do think that Winnipeg being 3rd is a likely outcome if Colorado's center depth does well. If their goaltenders continue what they started last season, Colorado should be top 2. Winnipeg being 3rd in the vote. If you're a Jets fan saying they never get respect, you're probably right. You're probably right. The way that the Jets turn that around, they've got to win come playoff time. They've got to go on a nice long run, at least a conference final. So the vote, 2nd place, and this was very, very close, Colorado. So Colorado, and again, what I did was I took the polls that I've been having you guys vote on and just weighting those polls and putting out a score. And according to that score, Colorado ends up second in the division, and Dallas ends up first. So what you're setting up here is Colorado and Winnipeg in a first round matchup again. So, yeah, I know people will have an opinion on that. And I don't disagree with that opinion either. I think if we get Colorado Winnipeg again, I don't know. I don't know if Winnipeg can overcome Colorado. I feel like the Avs are due for at least some sort of a run here, and yeah, that could be tough. But the Central Division is clearly at this point in time, at least on paper, and just looking at it visually, is the stronger division. The Central's definitely stronger. So this past season, Dallas was second, Colorado was third, Winnipeg was first. So all that's happened here is the vote took Winnipeg down to second, and Dallas and Colorado maintained their positions. Dallas ended up 4 points ahead of Colorado. It's not that much over an 82-game schedule. All right, let's move on to we'll do the Atlantic first. It doesn't really matter. 8th place according to the vote for the Atlantic Division, Buffalo. The only thing that does matter is I couldn't put an Eastern and a Western on this side and an Eastern and a Western on that side. People wouldn't be happy. So Buffalo getting the vote to be 8th in the division does not surprise me. The Buffalo Sabres, the expectations right now are low. And I feel like I'm understating it and saying low. This is a team that nobody's expecting anything from. We've seen cases before where nobody expects anything from a team and they're suddenly a playoff team. But since they're looking at 15 years without a playoffs, if they don't get there this year, it is hard to picture that for Buffalo. It's been almost a generation since they've made the playoffs. I really want Buffalo to make the playoffs. 7th in the division by the vote. I had those two backwards, didn't I? Man, I can't mess that up. 7th, according to the vote, is Boston. I have seen some Boston fans who believe that Boston... Well, see, there you go. It just dropped on the floor. I'll pick that up. See, even the magnet... Oh, it's not a magnet, it's a puck. I'm so used to having the magnets. But yeah, so even the puck is like, nah, we're done. Boston, 7th in the division. I could see that. Boston finished at the bottom of the division this past season. Buffalo was actually 7th. So by that standard, this is actually an improvement by Boston to be 7th in the division instead of 8th. Did they underachieve? Maybe. Maybe getting McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm back will make a big difference. We'll see. 6th according to the vote, and they were 6th this past season, and it's Detroit. So, Red Wing fans, is this the year that they finally get back into the playoffs for the first time since 2015? I don't have an answer. I wish I had an answer. Estimate. Yeah, it's fine. All right. Estimate on the timestamps. But Detroit, it's going to be an interesting season for Detroit. Either way, if they get off to a slow start, like how much more time is Yzerman going to have to realize, that the roster that he wants and see them in the playoffs and all that. How much longer is it going to be before ownership says we've given you, this amount of time? We felt we'd be further ahead. Teams do that. It happens. It's part of the sport. So yeah, Detroit is predicted to be 5th. This one's or 6th. This one surprised me for 5th. Ottawa. Now, one of the things with the vote to consider is Ottawa, if you're looking at Canadian teams, have fewer fans than Montreal or Toronto. That is definitely a factor in this. Ottawa this past season was 4th in the division. They finished 6 points ahead of the Montreal Canadiens. And by the vote, the Montreal Canadiens get 4th place. So this is where I'm kind of torn. And this is why I love this time of year. Because we have these debates. There is no right or wrong answer because we haven't started the season yet. But the idea that Montreal is going to finish ahead of Ottawa is an interesting idea. I don't know if they do or they don't. I don't think they do. I think Ottawa is going to be the stronger team. I feel like what Ottawa started this past year is sustainable. Montreal a little bit ahead of schedule. I could see them not necessarily missing the playoffs, but I could see them still being behind Ottawa this coming season, and maybe not recording quite as many points as they did this past year. But again, Montreal got fourth according to the vote. Third according to the vote, same as last year, almost anyways. Tampa was second last season. Florida had their struggles down the stretch, or they were coasting. Which was it? I know they were coasting. I'm making it sound like I'm asking the question, but it's rhetorical. They were definitely coasting. Tampa was not coasting. They were killing it. And then in the first round, things worked out really well for the team that had been coasting going into the playoffs. So Tampa third in the division. I don't see any reason to doubt that. But one question could be, Tampa's been a top team for a long time. Could we see them have a bit of a struggle? Could that open the door for an Ottawa to end up past them, or a Montreal to end up past them? Detroit, Boston, and Buffalo would be less likely, I would imagine, but crazy things happen. And then dropping from first to second, according to the vote, would be the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto won the division. I felt like that could be huge for them. Nope. It ended up, yes, they won 7 games in this past playoffs. That's the most playoff games they've won in a long time. But they still, once those pucks are in there, they're in there. But I know some of them are slightly ajar. It's driving me nuts as well. It's something I'll keep in mind the next time I'm using this. But Toronto is a team that really should have accomplished more to this point. And whoever you blame, okay, but this would set up Toronto and Tampa in the first round. So I would love to see a Toronto-Montreal first round. So if Montreal finished third and Toronto finished second, I'll get popcorn and get ready, because that'll be the second time they've played each other in 5 years. And it could be a lot of fun this time around. Which means the vote has Florida in first. Makes total sense for Florida to be in first according to the vote, because the Florida Panthers, the defending Stanley Cup champions. Right, yeah. Defending 2-time Stanley Cup champions. I heard you Florida fans yelling at the computer right there when I said it. Or at your phone. The defending 2-time Stanley Cup champions looking to make it 3 in a row. And the vote has them in first. I'm going to predict they do the same thing as this past season. That they don't play all out the full 82 games. Especially with Tkachuk being out until likely January. I'll say they have their meanderings. We will talk about, it looks like Florida's got problems now. They're not the same. And we're going to go through the whole discussion. And then the playoffs roll around and they steamroll everybody again. Sure, why not? So Florida's favored to finish first, which is an improvement from third this past season. But a lot of that is the Stanley Cup boost that you get. So Florida, number 1. All right, getting to the Metro Division now. 8th place, according to the vote, would be Pittsburgh. Let me just go ahead. I'll go back and make sure I get the timestamps all right. But Pittsburgh being basically picked as the last place team. And yeah, I could see that. I could absolutely see that, where Pittsburgh ends up at the bottom. The Pittsburgh Penguins are in the midst of a rebuild. We know this. The Pittsburgh Penguins have not been in a rebuild in a long time. And there is a very good case for them ending up drafting McKenna and being a team that could use McKenna. Crosby's got older, Malkin's older, Letang. They're definitely, looking at some sort of retool or rebuild soon. So McKenna would be great, but the internet will have a nice, wonderful reaction if/when that happens. 7th place, keep in mind everybody predicted Bedard was going to go there too, except for the ones predicting Chicago, and then the ones predicting Chicago were right. So according to the vote, Philadelphia would switch spots with Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia would be 7th. The one question mark I have with both of these teams is whose goaltending is going to hold up better. Between Philly and Pittsburgh, I think whoever's goaltending holds up better, they end up getting the higher spot of the two. I'm not sure if there's going to be much chance of them moving up further than 7th because of the rosters being built the way that they are and all that. But 6th place, according to the vote, is the New York Islanders. So this is where it gets interesting too. And I'll go across and talk about this. But this is 3 teams in the Metro Division that are clearly in the midst of a retool rebuild. And there was a time not too long ago where the Metro from 1 through 8 was easily the best division. I think that's changed. I think the best division now, I think it's between the Central and the Atlantic. Yeah, we'll discuss that at the end. I have an idea. Fifth place according to the vote, Columbus. Columbus fans don't want to be fifth. The Columbus Blue Jackets don't want to be fifth. And there's still time for them to make moves which could improve the team. I think that Columbus could get a playoff spot, but this is where it gets tough too. So if Columbus is fifth for them to get a playoff spot, that means the top three teams in the Atlantic get in, and then the rest are not good enough to get a wild card spot. That means Columbus would have to be ahead of Montreal and Ottawa. So looking at the numbers from last year, Columbus had 89 points, Montreal and Ottawa. Montreal had 91 and Ottawa had 97. So have they done enough to make up the 8-point deficit on Ottawa? And if the answer is no, then they're very unlikely to make the playoffs. Because then because if you're gonna grant these three teams are in, there you go. Fourth place according to the vote, and moving up from fifth. So what's interesting with the vote is the Islanders being sixth. That's the same spot they were this past season. The two Pennsylvania teams jump one another, and in this case, the Rangers jump past Columbus, dropping Columbus down to fifth. The Rangers should be a playoff team this season. I think the fact they went from a President's Trophy winning team to a non-playoff team is insane. I think things have to get better for the Rangers this year, but I didn't think they were going to miss the playoffs this past season either, so that's going to make things really interesting. Third place according to the vote, and very, very much barely third place, the New Jersey Devils. Like, just barely. So if a few of you guys had voted New Jersey a little bit higher, New Jersey would have been second in the division, but they get third according to the vote. And the New Jersey Devils being top three for multiple seasons would be, a boost for them and for their fan base. Having good back-to-back seasons has been a challenge for the New Jersey Devils for, like a decade, a little over a decade. So if they can be a consistently good team for a while, that'd be great for their fans, of course, for the team and for the organization. And then maybe some guys are going to want to go play in New Jersey, not just to play potentially with the Hughes brothers, but the chance to go out there and win. You can sell them on Luke and Jack Hughes if you want, but if you're also saying, hey, and by the way, we have a good shot at the Stanley Cup in the coming years, I think that makes things a little more attractive for free agents. So second place, according to the vote, the Capitals. So the Capitals would drop down to second, which means first place would be the Carolina Hurricanes. Always make sure the black is at the top. I always tell myself that in my brain because, man, that Boston one does not want to stay. The Boston one's like, nope, I don't like this. This is we're done. But yeah, Carolina always have the black at the top. Otherwise, it looks like they're in distress because the black's supposed to be at the top, the red's supposed to be on the bottom. I learned that very, very early on with the channel. It's not something I was even worried about because I never had magnets when I was a hockey fan before I had the channel. But looking at the divisions, so if we're trying to measure the strength of the divisions, why don't we just go across the top? So you have Vegas, Dallas, Florida, and Carolina. Obviously, Florida, defending Stanley Cup champions, two-time champions. Florida wins that. Edmonton, Colorado, Toronto, and Washington. Edmonton's been a Cup finalist the last 2 years, so Edmonton would have to win that. LA, Winnipeg, yes, they do. They do, because I said so. LA, Winnipeg, Tampa, and New Jersey. That's an interesting one because you have the Kings can't get out of the first round because they can't stop playing the Oilers. The Jets struggle in the playoffs. Hellebuck's numbers haven't been great. Tampa's had their struggles in early rounds since the 3 straight Stanley Cup final appearances. And New Jersey, I mean, based on the President's Trophy, I'll say Winnipeg is the best of the 4 right now. Then you get to fourth place, Vancouver, Minnesota, Montreal, and the Rangers. I would say the Rangers out of those 4. Calgary, St. Louis, Ottawa, and Columbus. I would take Ottawa out of that 4, although honorable mention to St. Louis. Anaheim, Utah, Detroit, and the Islanders. That, to me, Utah, I think, is the best, but Detroit could surprise people a little bit. Seattle, Nashville, Boston, and Philly. Oh, I'll say Seattle out of those 4. And then the 4 bottom teams. San Jose, Chicago, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh. The best of the 4 is probably Buffalo. I was going to say Pittsburgh, and I thought, nah, Buffalo. Buffalo of the 4. So the best of the worst? if anybody watches Red Letter Media. But anyways, yeah, that would make Buffalo the best of the worst. So I think the divisions, yeah, it's Central and Atlantic for me. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. We are getting up to that time of year where we're going to get to training camp, and then we start to see how wrong we are, how wrong we're going to be. I will do a prediction of my own. I'm going to look through. I've got the Hockey News yearbook. I'll go through that a few times and come up with my own predictions of how I think teams will do. And then all of that goes by the wayside once we get to the regular season. But I wanted to start it with the votes that all you fine people on the internet put in, and the standings do not move around a lot. It does mean you get Washington and New Jersey in the first round. You get Toronto and Tampa in the first round, Colorado and Winnipeg, and Edmonton and LA again. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Who's overrated, who's underrated? There you go. Hit like and subscribe in the event that you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.